Shalom, 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 everybody. How y'all doing? Welcome back. Welcome back to Reading with Shilo. Shilo, man, how y'all doing? So I'm up, gonna go ahead and get chapter 10 and chapter 12 in this session. I mean, my bad. Chapter 10 and chapter 11 in this session of Reading with Shilo. We are in The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman, man. The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And we are on chapter 10. Love is a choice. And 10 and 11 don't look like they're going to be very long. So we're going to go ahead and get them out the way. Hope everybody good. Hope everybody is good. Whenever you see this, whether you come in live or you catch it on the back end. Hope y'all are good, having a wonderful one. But let's move on. But we almost done. We are almost done with the book. We're on the back end, man. The book only has 13 chapters. So 13 is going to be pretty long. I'll read 12 by itself and 13 by itself. But 10 and 11 we can make out of that really quick. The Five Love Languages, chapter 10. 10. Chapter 10. Love is a choice. Love is a choice. How can we speak each other's love language when we are full of hurt, anger, and resentment over past failures? The answer to that question lies in the essential nature of our humanity. We are creatures of choice. That means that we have the capacity to make poor choices, which all of us have done. We have spoken critical words and we have done hurtful things. We are not proud of those choices, although they may have seemed justified at that moment. Poor choices in the past don't mean that we must make them in the future. Instead, we can say, I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but I would like to make the future different. I would like to love you in your language. I would like to meet your needs. I have seen marriages rescued from the brink of divorce when couples make the choice to love. Love doesn't erase the past, but it makes the future different. When we choose active expressions of love in the primary love language of our spouse, we create an emotional climate where we can deal with our past conflicts and failures. I just don't love her anymore. I just don't love her anymore. Brett was in my office, stone-faced and seemingly unfeeling. He had come not by his own invitation. Excuse me. He had come not by his own initiative, but at my request. A week earlier, his wife, Becky, had been sitting in the same chair, crying. Between her outbursts of tears, she managed to verbalize that Brent had told her that he no longer loved her and that he was leaving. She was devastated. When she regained her composure, she said, We have both worked so hard the last 2 or 3 years. I knew that we were not spending as much time together as we used to, but I thought we were working for a common goal. I cannot believe that he said this. He has always been such a kind and caring person. He is such a good father to our children, she continued. How could he do this to us? I listened as she described their 12 years of marriage. It was a story I had heard many times before. They had an exciting courtship, got married at the height of their in love experience, had the typical adjustments in the early days of marriage, and pursued the American dream. In due time, they came down off of the emotional high of the in love experience, but did not learn to speak each other's love language sufficiently. She had lived with the love tank only half full for the last several years, but she had received enough expressions of love to make her think that everything was okay. However, his love tank was empty. I told Becky that I would see if Brent would talk with me. I told Brent on the phone. As you know, Becky came to see me and told me about her struggle with what is happening in the marriage. I want to help her, but in order to do so, I need to know what you're thinking. He agreed readily, and now he sat in my office. Spider His outward appearance was in stark contrast to Becky's. She had been weeping uncontrollably, but he was stoic. I had the impression, however, that his weeping had taken place weeks or perhaps months ago, and that it had been an inward weeping. The story Brent told confirmed my hunch. I just don't love her anymore, he said. I haven't loved her for a long time. I don't want to hurt her, but we are not close. Our relationship has become empty. I don't enjoy being with her anymore. I don't know what happened. I wish it were different, but I don't have any feelings for her. Brent was thinking and feeling what hundreds of thousands of husbands have thought and felt throughout the years. It's a I don't love her anymore mindset that gives men the emotional freedom to seek love with someone else. The same is true for wives who use the same excuse. I sympathize with Brent, for I've been there. Thousands of husbands and wives have been there, emotionally empty, wanting to do the right thing, not wanting to hurt anymore, or anyone, excuse me, but being pushed by their emotional needs to seek love outside the marriage. Fortunately, I had discovered in the earlier years of my own marriage the difference between the in love experience and the emotional need to feel loved. Most in our society have not yet learned that difference. The in love experience that we discussed in chapter 3 is on the level of instinct. It is not premeditated. It simply happens in the normal context of male female relationships. It can be fostered or quenched, but it does not arise by conscious choice. It is short lived, usually 2 years or less, and seems to serve for humankind the same function as the mating call of the Canada goose. The in love experience temporarily meets one's emotional need for love. It gives us the feeling that someone cares, that someone admires us and appreciates us. Our emotion soars with that thought that another person sees us as number one, that he or she is willing to devote time and energy exclusively to our relationship. For a brief period, long it, however long it lasts, our emotional need for love is met. Our tank is full. We can conquer the world. Nothing is impossible. For many individuals, it is the first time they have ever lived with a full emotional tank, and it's euphoric. In time, however, we come down from the natural high back to the real world. If our spouse has learned to speak our primary love language, our need for love will continue to be satisfied. If, on the other hand, he or she does not speak our love language, our tank will slowly drain, and we will no longer feel loved. Meeting that need in one's spouse is definitely a choice. If I learn the emotional love language of my spouse and speak it frequently, she will continue to feel loved. When she comes down from the obsession of the in love experience, she will hardly even miss it because her emotional love tank will continue to be filled. However, if I have not learned her primary love language or have chosen not to speak it when she descends from the emotional high, she will have the natural yearnings of unmet emotional needs. After some years of living with an empty love tank, she will likely fall in love with someone else and the cycle will begin again. Meeting my wife's needs for love is a choice I make each day. If I know her primary love language and choose to speak it, her deepest emotional needs will be met, and she will feel secure in my love. If she does the same for me, my emotional needs are met, and both of us love with a full tank. In a state of emotional contentment, both of us will give our creative energies to many wholesome projects outside of the marriage while we continue to keep our marriage exciting and growing. With all of that in mind, I looked back at the deadpan face of Brent and wondered if I could help him. I knew in my heart that he was probably already all involved with another in love experience. I wondered if it was in the beginning stages or at its height. Few men who suffer from the empty emotional love tank leave their marriage until they have prospects of meeting that need somewhere else. Sometime it catch you off guard. Bum! Abracadabra. Voila. Take that. Brent was honest and revealed that he had been in love with someone else for several months. He had hoped that the feelings would go away and that he could work things out with his wife. But things at home had gotten worse, and his love for the other woman had increased. He could not imagine living without his new lover. Oh, no. I sympathized with Brent in his dilemma. He sincerely did not want to hurt his wife or his children, but at the same time, he felt he deserved a life of happiness. I told him the statistics that the divorce rate is higher in second marriages. He was surprised to hear that, but was certain that he would beat the odds. I told him about the research on the efforts of divorce, on the effects of divorce on children. But he was convinced that he would continue to be a good father to his children and that they would get over the trauma of the divorce. I talked to Brent about the issues in this book and explained the difference between the experiences of falling in love and deep emotional need to feel love. I explained the five love languages and challenged him to give his marriage another chance. All the while, I knew that my intellectual and reasoned approach to marriage compared to the emotional high that he was experiencing while was like pitting a BB gun against an automatic weapon. He expressed appreciation for my concern and asked that I do everything possible to help Becky, but he assured me that he saw no hope for the marriage. Coming down off the high. 1 month later, I received a call from Brent. He indicated that he would like to talk to me again. This time, when he entered my office, he was noticeably disturbed. He was not the calm, cool man I had seen before. His lover had begun to come down off of the emotional high, and she was observing things in Brent that she did not like. She was withdrawing from the relationship, and he was crushed. Tears came to his eyes as he told me how much she meant to him and how unbearable it was to experience her rejection. I listened for an hour before Brent ever asked for my advice. I told him how sympathetic I was to his pain and indicated that what he was experiencing was the natural emotional grief from a loss, and that the grief would not go away overnight. I explained, however, that the experience was inevitable. I reminded him of the temporary nature of the in love experience, that sooner or later we always come down from the high to the real world. Some fall out of love before they get married. Some fall out of love before they get married, others after they get married. He agreed that it was better now than later. After a while, I suggested that perhaps the crisis was a good time for him and his wife to get some marriage counseling. I reminded him that true, long-lasting emotional love is a choice, and that emotional love could be reborn in this marriage if he and his wife learned to love each other in the right love language. He agreed to marriage counseling, and 9 months later, Brent and Becky left my office with a reborn marriage. When I saw Brent 3 years later, he told me what a wonderful marriage he had and thanked me for helping him with at a crucial time in his life. He told me that the grief over losing the other lover had been gone for more than 2 years. He smiled and said, "My tank has never been so full, and Becky is the happiest woman you have ever going to meet." Fortunately, Brent was the benefactor of what I call the disequilibrium of the in love experience. That is, almost never do two people fall in love on the same day, and almost never do they fall in love on this. Excuse me. That is, I already write the first line. That is, almost never do two people fall in love on the same day, and almost never do they fall out of love on the same day. You don't have to be a social scientist to discover that truth. Just listen to country music. Brent's lover happened to have fallen out of love at an opportune time. The power of choosing to love. In the 9 months that I counseled Brent and Becky, we worked through numerous conflicts that they had never resolved before. But the key to the rebirth of their marriage was discovering each other's primary love language and choosing to speak it frequently. Let me return to the question I raised in chapter 9. What if the love language of your spouse is something that doesn't come naturally to you? I am often asked this question at my marriage seminars, and my answer is always so. My wife's love language is acts of service. One of the things I do for her regularly as an act of love is to vacuum the floors. Do you think that vacuuming floors comes naturally for me? My mother used to make me vacuum all through junior high and high school. I couldn't go play ball on Saturday until I finished vacuuming the entire house. In those days, I said to myself, when I get out of here, one thing I'm not going to do, I'm not going to vacuum houses. I'll get myself a wife to do that. But I vacuum my house now, and I vacuum it regularly. There is only one reason I vacuum my house: love. You couldn't pay me enough to vacuum my house, but I do it for love. You see, when an action doesn't come naturally to you, it is a greater expression of love. My wife knows that when I vacuum the house, it's nothing but 100% pure, unadulterated love. And I get credit for the whole thing. Someone says, "But Dr. Chapman, that's different. I know that my spouse's love language is physical touch, and I'm not a toucher. I never saw my mother and father hug each other. They never hugged me, and I am just not a toucher. What am I going to do? Do you have two hands? Can you put them together? Now imagine that you have your spouse in the middle and pull him or her towards you. I'll bet that if you hug your spouse 3,000 times, it will begin to feel more comfortable. But ultimately, comfort is not the issue. We are talking about love, and love is something you do for someone else, not something you do for yourself. Most of us do many things each day that do not come naturally to us. For some of us, that is getting out of bed in the morning. We go against our feelings and get out of bed. Why? Because we believe there's something worthwhile to do that day. And normally, before the day is over, we feel good about having gotten up. Our actions preceded our emotions. The same is true with love. We discover the primary love language of our spouse, and we choose to speak it whether or not it is natural for us. We are not claiming to have warm, exciting feelings. We are simply choosing to do it for his or her benefit. We want to meet our spouse's emotional needs, and we reach out to speak his love language. In so doing, his emotional love tank is filled, and the chances are he will reciprocate to speak our language. When he does, our emotions return and our love tank begins to fill. Love is a choice, and either partner can start the process today. Your turn. A key thought here is the idea of speaking our mate's love language, whether or not it is natural for us. Why is this so fundamental to a healthy marriage? And that was chapter 10. Love is a choice. Love is a choice. Let's get to chapter 11. Love makes the difference. Love makes the difference. Chapter 11. Love is not our only emotional need. Psychologists have observed that among our basic needs are the need for security, self worth, and significance. Love, however, interferes with all of those. If I feel loved by my spouse, I can relax, knowing that my lover will do me no ill. I feel secure in her presence. I may face many uncertainties in my vocation. I may have enemies in other areas of my life, but with my spouse, I feel secure. Hmm. It's like the Proverbs 31 woman. Does thy husband trust in you? Does he feel secure in you? Oh man. That you will do him good all the days of you. Do him good and not evil all the days of your life. My sense of self-worth is fed by the fact that my spouse loves me. After all, if she loves me, I must be worth loving. My parents may have given me negative or mixed messages about my worth, but my spouse knows me as an adult and loves me. My love builds my self-esteem. Hmm. The need for significance is the emotional force behind much of our behavior. Life is driven by the desire for success. We want our lives to count for something. We have our own idea of what it means to be significant, and we work hard to reach our goals. Feeling loved by a spouse enhances our sense of significance. We reason, if someone loves me, I must have significance. I am significant because I stand at the apex of the created order. I have the ability to think in abstract terms, communicate my thoughts via words, and make decisions. By means of printed or recorded words, I can benefit from the thoughts of those who have preceded me. This is by the means of recorded words right here. I can profit from others' experiences through, though they lived at a different age, in a different age and culture. I experienced the death of family and friends and sense that there is existence beyond the material. I discovered that in all cultures, people believe in a spiritual world. My heart tells me that it is true, even when my mind, trained in scientific observation, raises critical questions. I am significant. Life has meaning. There's a higher purpose. I want to believe it, but I may not feel significant until someone expresses love to me. When my spouse lovingly invests time, money, and effort in me, I believe that I am significant. Without love, I may spend a lifetime in search of significance, self worth, and security. When I experience love, it influences all of those needs positively. I am now free to develop my potential. I am more secure in my self worth and can now turn my efforts outward toward instead of being obsessed with my own needs. True love always liberates. True love always liberates. In the context of marriage, if we do not feel loved, our differences are magnified. We come to view each other as a threat to our happiness. We fight for self worth and significance. The marriage becomes a battlefield rather than a haven. Love is not the answer to everything, but it creates a climate of security in which we can seek answers to those things that bother us. In the security of love, a couple can discuss differences without condemnation. Excuse me. Conflicts can be resolved. Two people who are different can learn to live together in harmony. We discover how to bring out the best in each other. Those are the rewards of love. We're like roommates. We're like roommates. When John and Susan arrived at my office, they had been traveling for 3 hours. It was obvious John did not want to be there. Susan had twisted his arm by threats of leaving. I do not suggest this approach, but people do not always know my suggestions before they come to see me. My bad, man. Ooh, I just had a little sleep monster jump on me very quick. That's why I keep drinking that lemonade, trying to stay awake. Excuse me. Hmm. We're like roommates. When John and Susan arrived at my office, they had been traveling for 3 hours. It was obvious John did not want to be there. Susan had twisted his arm by threats of leaving him. I do not suggest this approach, but people do not always know my suggestions before they come to see me. They had been married for more than 30 years, for more than 30 years and had never gone to counseling before. Susan began the conversation. Dr. Chapman, I want you to know two things up front. First of all, we do not have any money problems. I was reading in a magazine that money is the biggest problem in marriage. That's not true for us. We both have worked through the years. The house is paid for, the cars are paid for. Second, I want you to know that we don't argue. I hear my friends talking about the arguments they have all the time. I can't remember the last time we ever had an argument. Both of us agree that arguing is fruitless, so we don't argue. As a counselor, I appreciated Susan's clearing the path. I knew that she was going to get right to the point. She continued, the problem is that I just don't feel any love coming from my husband. Life is a routine for us. We get up in the morning and go off to work. In the afternoon, he does his thing and I do my thing. We generally have dinner together, but we don't talk. He watches TV while we eat. After dinner, he putters in the basement and then sleeps in front of the TV until I tell him it's time to go to bed. That's our schedule 5 days a week. One Saturday, he plays golf in the morning, works in the yard in the afternoon, and we go out to dinner with another couple on Saturday night. He talks to them, but when we get into the car to go home, the conversation is over. On Sunday morning, we go to church and so on. We're like two roommates living in the same house. There's nothing going on between us. I don't feel any love coming from him. There's no warmth, there's no emotion. It's empty, it's dead. I don't think I can go on much longer like this. By that time, Susan was crying. I handed her a tissue and looked at John. First, his first comment was, I don't understand her. After a brief pause, he continued, I have done everything I know to show her that I love her, especially the last 2 or 3 years since she's been complaining about it so much. Nothing seems to help. No matter what I do, she continues to complain that she doesn't feel loved. I don't know what else to do. I can tell that John was frustrated and exasperated. I inquired, what have you been doing to show her you love, to show your love for Susan? Well, for one thing, he said, I get home from work before she does. So I get dinner started every night. In fact, if you want to know the truth, I have dinner almost ready when she gets home 4 nights a week. The other night, we go out to eat. I do all the vacuuming because her back is bad. I do all the yard work because she is allergic to pollen. I fold the clothes when they come out of the dryer. He went on telling me other things that he did for Susan. When he finished, I wondered, what does this woman do? John continued, I do all those things to show her that I love her, and yet she sits there and says to you what she has been saying to me for 2 or 3 years, that she doesn't feel loved. I don't know what else to do for her. When I turned back to Susan, she said, Dr. Chapman, all of those things are fine, but I want him to sit and talk to me. We don't ever talk. He always doing something. I want him to be there with me or to be with me. Give me some time. Look at me. Talk to me about us, about our lives. Susan was crying again. It's obvious to me that her primary love language is quality time. She was crying for attention. She wanted to be treated as a person, not an object. John's business did not meet her emotional needs. John's busyness did not meet her emotional needs. As I talked further with John, I discovered that he did not feel loved either. But he wasn't talking about it. He reasoned, if you have been married for 30 blah, blah, blah. If you have been married for 35 years and your bills are paid and you don't argue, what more could you hope for? That's where he was. But when I said to him, what would be the ideal wife to you? If you could have the perfect wife, what should she be like? He looked at me in the eye for the first time and asked, do you really want to know? Yes, I said. He sat up on the couch and folded his arms across his chest. A big smile broke on his face and he said, I dreamed about this. A perfect wife would be a wife who would come home in the afternoon and fix dinner for me. I would be working in the yard and she would call me and eat. After dinner, she would wash the dishes. I would probably help her some, but she would take the responsibility. She would sew the buttons on my shirt when they fall off. Susan could contain herself no longer. She turned to him and said, but you told me that you like to cook. I don't mind cooking, John responded, But the man asked me what would be ideal. I knew John's primary love language without another word, acts of service. In his mind, that was the way you show love, by doing things for people. The problem was that doing things was not Susan's primary love language. It doesn't mean that her emotion, it does not mean to her emotionally what it would have meant to him if she had been doing things for him. When the truth dawned on John, the first thing he said was, why didn't someone tell me this years ago? I could have been sitting talking with her 15 minutes every night instead of doing all this stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the short end of the stick, huh? He turned to Susan and said, for the first time in my life, I finally understand what you mean when you say we don't talk. I could never understand that. I thought we did talk. I always ask, did you sleep well? I thought we were talking, but now I understand. I'll give you 15 minutes every night for the rest of my life, starting tonight. You can count on that. Susan looked at John. I would love that. And she continued, I would love that, John. I don't mind fixing dinner for you. It will have to be later than usual because I get off work later than you. But I don't mind cooking. And I'll be happy to sew your buttons off. You never left them off long enough for me to get them. I'll wash dishes the rest of my life if it will make you feel loved. Susan and John went home and started loving each other in the right love languages. In less than 2 months, they were on the second honeymoon. After a trip to the Bahamas, they called to tell me what a radical change had taken place in their marriage. Can emotional love be reborn in a marriage? You bet. The key is to learn the primary love language of your spouse and choose to speak it. Your turn. What does your spouse do to make you feel more significant? How do you want to do? Come on, Shilo. How about how about what you do for them? What does your spouse do to make you feel more significant? How about what do you do for them? And that was chapter 11. Love makes a difference. We'll come back next time with chapter 12. Loving the unlovely. That was chapter 10 and 11 of the 5 Love Languages by Mr. Gary Chapman. Oh, man, I started messing up towards the end for real. I apologize for that, but we'll keep pushing, man. We'll keep pushing, see what we can learn and grow from. Oh, man. I can see this going down. But I hope all y'all have a wonderful time when y'all see this. Man, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think. Definitely leave me a comment, man. What y'all think on these 5 love languages? Are y'all down with that? Are y'all someone that maybe y'all have used these things in y'all marriage? Did it work for y'all? Or, do you think it's humbug like I do? Humbug and shenanigans. I think women be on them shenanigans a lot of times. But some of this, you never know. You might find some truth in the oddest places. But we're almost done, man. We're almost done. Just 2 more chapters left in the book. 2 more chapters. 2 more chapters, and we're going to move on to the next book. Contrast, for sure. A contrast. I really haven't been mentioning it, but definitely a contrast from the 5 love languages. But we'll keep going. Till next time, man. Shalom. Shalom, everybody.